It has begun. My quest to conquer all 103 films on my top 100 films movie poster started last night as I sat down with my family to watch Groundhog Day. This is a film that I am very familiar with. I saw it when it came out in theaters, so for me it was nothing new, but it was still enjoyable. My two daughters had not seen it yet, and they seemed to have a good time. And today I'm going to briefly discuss it. It's something of a review, but it's not the kind of review that you would get in newspapers. I'm going to discuss the whole film. So this is a spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, I think we're going on its 30th anniversary. So the question is, why haven't you seen it yet? But anyway, in fact, a little spoiler right here, I highly recommend it. It is, I would call it I would call it a modern classic. And I think it's good for mostly the whole family. I would say let your kids be close to teenage. There are some moral questions. I think they are positively resolved. I think they're resolved in the right way. But every kid matures differently, so you have to decide. But I would suggest parents see it first. It's PG, parental guidance. Anyway. It's the story of Phil Connors, played by Bill Murray, a very egotistical weatherman who goes to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to do a report on the observance, the groundhog observance that they have there. He takes along Rita, his producer, played by Andy McDowell, and his cameraman, Larry, played by Chris Elliott. He wakes up on that morning, he goes through the whole day, he hopes to leave again, but there's a snowstorm, so he's stuck in town. He has to stay in Punxsutawney. And then he wakes up the next morning and notices that the radio is playing exactly what it played on February 2nd. Everybody's walking down the street like it's February 2nd. It is, in fact, February 2nd again. And he finds himself stuck in a loop where no matter what he does during the day, every morning when he wakes up, it's 6 a.m., February 2nd, once again. And everybody else is living it for the very first time. Exactly where they were at 6 a.m. when reality ceased and this time loop began. But Phil has to go through it over and over and over and over. That's basically the plot. Well, or at least the setting. What makes the movie interesting then is what writer and director Harold Ramis decided to do with it. I should say co-writer. I don't have the credit up for Danny Rubin. Danny Rubin helped create the story. What they decided to do with it was explore what a person would do with that knowledge and that experience. And that is what makes the film, or what gives the film its depth. And I'll start right off, even before we go into that, saying that Harold Ramis handled that. He and his cast and crew handled that with what phrase do I want? They brought their A game. This could have been a cheap comedy. It could have been pretty stupid in the hands of some other director or just a production team that wanted to just make a throwaway film. They really brought their attention to detail. They brought their care to it, and they created a film that has lasted. All right, we'll see what I can get back to. We'll see what I have time for. But just in terms of the themes itself, Phil goes through an entire transformation because of that. It starts by him realizing he can do anything. And so he gets in a car, he goes for a wild ride, it starts a police chase, he gets thrown in jail. Wakes up the next morning in bed, everything's fine. And so then he just starts to do things. What would you do if at the end of the day, time leaped backwards and everything you did was gone? All of the consequences were removed. So he explores just sort of this hedonistic lifestyle, including entrapping beautiful women into coming back to his room with him, and eating anything he wants, and taking up smoking, and just having a wild time. And in that sense, there's almost a picture of Dorian Gray going on here, where Dorian could do anything he wanted, and all of the consequences were absorbed by the massive oil painting of him. In this case, all of Phil's consequences are absorbed by time itself. Time goes backwards, and the consequences are gone. He learns very much the same lesson that Dorian Gray learns, and that's because it's a true lesson. When you have the ultimate liberty to do whatever you want for as long as you want, and there are no negative consequences for it, life becomes empty. Life becomes dull and boring. Life becomes depressing. And in the film, Phil Connors eventually becomes suicidal. And so the next thing he tries is killing himself. And he wakes up at 6 a.m. on February 2nd. So realizing that he is stuck there, he starts to notice life. That's when he finally starts to notice life, is when he's faced death. And that's when he starts to see who he can help, see what good things he can do. And ultimately, his final release, what enables him to wake up on February 3rd, is when he has spent the whole day thinking of other people. And it really is nice. Now, I only have a few minutes here. 10 minutes is not going to be enough for a good film review, I'm learning. It's just so much fun. Well, it's fun in part because Bill Murray has a wonderful delivery for a film like this. He knows how to be snide and snarky. He knows how to be goofball. He really has a good time. And then his co-stars, Andy McDowell and Chris Elliott, I didn't know at the time. They were unknown to me, but they do a wonderful job in filling in those side parts that are the supporting cast. Again, Harold Ramis and his direction are smooth. I was fascinated to read the trivia that they basically shot the whole movie 3 times. Once in cloudy weather, once in partly cloudy, and once in sunny, because they never quite knew what the weather would be in their shooting location, which was not Punxsutawney, by the way. So they had to be ready for any weather so that slowly they could see which of the 3 versions would get put together first. And they could call it finished and send it to theaters. That is just incredible. If you watch the backgrounds, the attention to detail by the on-set production manager, there's the people responsible for the extras and who moves when and where, the replication as Phil lives through hundreds of years worth of Groundhog Days. All of the people in the background are doing pretty much the same thing over and over and over. It's fantastic. What else did I really find appealing about the film? The writing is clever. The decision on how to shorten the days. Obviously, the first time he goes through February 2nd, we see his whole day. And then the second time, we see most of it. And then the third time, we start getting shortcuts. So, well, we don't need to see all of that. We can cut to this and cut to that. And then we start getting just little bits, like in the montage where he's trying to seduce Rita. And so he sits down with her at a restaurant, and he says something that inadvertently offends her. So he takes note of that. And we cut right to the start of that scene again. We don't need to see him get up and shower and go through his whole day. We just cut right to him starting that scene again, and it could be months later by his calendar, where he's learned to speak French. He's learned to sculpt ice sculptures. He's learned to play the piano. Just the putting together of it is fantastic. I really can't say enough. But on the other hand, so much has already been said in so many essays and stuff because it is 30 years old. I will leave you with, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Go see it. It's not in theaters anymore. Rent it. Find a way to see it. Stream it. Whatever it takes. All right. That was a bit rough. I probably should take notes when I want to do full film reviews if I want this kind of thing to catch on. But anyway, thanks for watching, and happy February 3rd. Glad you woke up this morning instead of seeing yesterday again today.